on. Come on, where is it? Ugh!
Why am I sat out in the rain?
Ah! What's this? Oh. Oh no. Ah! Ah! Oh. I just had a dream they made Banjo 3 and fucked it up.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name's Oliver. Rare were a studio responsible for some of my favourite games of all time, but when you talk about Rare, really only one game springs to mind. Banjo-Kazooie was a 3D platformer that sparked the collectathon genre. It was a game brimming with life and ideas. Every aspect of this game was designed with a certain level of love and attention that very few games get. Everything from the controls to the levels to the music was perfect. They then went on to make a sequel 2 years later, which unlike a lot of people I actually think is better than the original. But come on, any idiot with a YouTube channel has covered this game, so I'm just going to assume you know what it is. Fans for years have patiently awaited a sequel. We did technically get a sequel in 2008, but let's just say, it didn't count. In May 2015, however, hope was restored when former members of Rare got the band back together and started a Kickstarter in hopes to fund their new game, a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. With an original goal of £175,000, they smashed it and ended up with over 2 million, showing the world that 3D platformers are still very much alive. Fast forward to the game's release in 2017 and to say opinions were mixed is an understatement. They were all over the place, an all-out war started between people who hate the game and people who love it. Now, I've never played Yooka-Laylee because a part of me just wanted the heat to die down, and I've sort of just forgotten about it until now. So, understand this is coming from someone who is a fan of the original games, but I'm not going into this with any hype whatsoever. Completing games like this tends to be what they're all about. They're designed with the idea that the core gameplay loop is collecting everything. Collectathons are responsible for turning a lot of people into completionists, and if you ever 100%ed one, you know it could rather be a great experience, or it could be Donkey Kong 64. If there's one undeniable thing you can say about Yooka-Laylee is that it does manage to capture the charm of the original quite a bit. Honestly, from the moment the game loads up, you could feel the obvious influence of Banjo-Kazooie hit you in the face.
Is that good enough?
Every part of the presentation, such as the music and the character design, is straight out of Rare's glory days. The writing is clever and witty just like before. Look at this guy, he's Kartos the God of Awe. Come on, I'm a comedy genius and I can't even come up with that. Yooka-Laylee's plot is as simple as you'd expect it to be. After evil CEO Capital B sucks up our protagonist's magical book for his own evil deeds, the pages, or pages as the game refers to them, get scattered across multiple worlds and it's up to you to track them all down. It's incredibly short and simple, and that's exactly what it should be. These games tell their story through exploration and detail in the worlds, much like a Mario game. Okay, now that the positives are out the way, time to tear this game to shreds. Yooka-Laylee is an uninspired, frustrating mess of a game. The design decisions here are just baffling. There's a lot of stuff to cover, but I think it's important to start with how it looks. Other than nice animations, there is a significant lack of polish in almost every area. The textures and overall design of the worlds are just dull. A lot of this you could probably blame on the decision to use the Unity engine, which in case you didn't know is what you make those shitty free horror games on. One of the biggest things you have to nail with these types of games is making everything feel natural. Locating and remembering where everything is in the Banjo games was so easy thanks to the careful design of them. In Yooka-Laylee, things are seemingly placed at random and nothing feels like it's part of the world. There are things like floating platforms and random structures placed everywhere that don't add any identity to the worlds. It doesn't help that there are barely any characters unique to these worlds too. Most characters are just reused. The textures are all over the place in terms of quality. Sometimes the game looks pretty good, other times it looks like a Unity game. There doesn't seem to be any sort of imagination that's gone into any of these worlds. If you think of worlds like Click Clock Wood and Gruntildas, there is an obvious theme with all of these levels, and every aspect such as something like the enemy design all feeds into bringing this world to life. This is partly why Banjo was an unforgettable experience. Yooka-Laylee doesn't have any of this. It doesn't have any themes outside of, this is a swamp, this is a snow level, I don't know what this is. With a game focused around exploration, which by the way is the most engaging thing you can do in a video game, having your worlds be bland and uninspired is one of the biggest sins you can commit. Now I could sit here and complain about the presentation, but that's nothing compared to the actual gameplay. Believe it or not, I don't actually have a problem with the camera. Sure, it's not the best in the world, but overall it works fine and the controls are fairly tight too. You see, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what video game you're trying to design, you have to constantly ask yourself, what is the player feeling right now and what do I want them to feel? Now, you probably think this is obvious, but Playtonic apparently don't understand that making 90% of your game's activities annoying minigames isn't fun. Instead of doing what the original games were famous for, which was making a majority of your collectibles hard to find so your player has to explore, they decided to just lock most of them behind mind-numbing minigames and puzzles. The collectibles are all what you'd expect, you know, the jiggies, notes, Jinjos, they all make a return here as well as the one per world items such as health upgrades. My biggest issue with Yooka-Laylee overall is the lack of thought it requires to play. Because the worlds are bland and everything is barely hidden, there is no engagement, all you've done is make an incredibly boring minigame collection. For example, 2 pages per world are locked behind these arcade games that are just honestly insulting, not a single one is fun and some of them are just annoying to finish. There is a minecart section in every world that is clunky to control and is possibly the worst thing in the game. I mean, I'd take Canary Mary over this shit any day. I did it. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Do you see what I mean now when I say they didn't ask themselves what is the player feeling right now? No one would find this fun, but yet you did it anyway. All the pages that aren't locked with a minigame behind them usually involves you going through an unfun platforming segment or doing some puzzle. Only a handful of pages manage to recapture that feeling of Banjo-Kazooie, but they are so few and far between it doesn't matter. There are bosses in the game, but they're not interesting or challenging, which is a massive downgrade from the great boss fights in Banjo-Tooie. There are a lot of other annoyances too, such as there's no health anywhere most of the time, and enemies are just randomly placed with no thought at all. One of the worst issues in this game is that if a page requires multiple steps such as acquiring certain items, if you exit the world it won't save your progress, meaning you have to repeat the entire set of objectives, so you better hope to God it doesn't crash. One of the most important aspects of Banjo-Kazooie was learning new moves and accessing different transformations as you progress through the game. The reason this was so important was whenever you ran into something that you couldn't access or interact with, you knew that you would later have to come back after you've gotten a certain move. This made the player make a mental note of that place, so when they learned that certain move and made the connection with something they saw earlier, they'd backtrack and therefore be rewarded for it. While Yooka-Laylee has backtracking, it doesn't have nearly as much as attention put into it, and the transformations are completely pointless other than to get one pagey. Thanks to this, you can practically play Yooka-Laylee on autopilot. The game is nothing but aimlessly wandering around to the next obvious activity, which isn't good design and therefore is not fun. What do you think, Cat? When it comes to designing a 3D platformer, every part of it could be perfect, but if your core gameplay loop isn't fun, then the whole thing falls apart. Not only does Yooka-Laylee fuck that up, but it also misses the mark in a lot of other areas too. Sure, the mechanic of expanding the world is cool, but it doesn't matter when the gameplay is so poor. You wanna know what it takes to 100% Yooka-Laylee? Fuckload of patience, that's what! Despite everything I've said so far, I would not call Yooka-Laylee a failed Kickstarter or even a failed collectathon, as it did deliver what they promised. And it is technically a collectathon, just not a well-designed one. If you want an example of how not to do a collectathon, just look at Shrek Extra Large. It has good music though. Yooka-Laylee has a lot of content to get through, and yes, most of it sucks. In each world there are 25 pages, 200 quills, 4 special items such as health upgrades, and the molecule which allows you to transform, and the 5 ghost riders which are of course the Jinjos. Tracking these things down can be a bit tricky, but the real issue with completion simply comes from mustering the will to play it. I hope you like these stupid arcade minigames because you have to play each one 2 times and on the most frustrating things in the game. Thankfully they only last 2 minutes, but if you don't get the high score you have to play the whole thing again. This also applies to the minecart sections, which require you to get a certain amount of gems in order to win, and these are about as enjoyable as you can imagine. How about that fun mini-golf section? or the countless fly through the hoop sections. Oh, how about the entire casino level? God, I love that one. So after torturing yourself and going the extra mile, you are rewarded with tonics, which are basically cheats. These give you access to things like being able to take an extra hit or making certain moves cost less power. They're not all that useful considering you'll unlock most of them at the end of the game, but hey, at least it's something. The issue with completing Yooka-Laylee is that there's no rewards for doing everything except for collecting all the pages, which gives Yooka a pair of shorts. Thanks, game. Nothing for collecting all the quills or the ghosts, no secret ending, no nothing. To be honest, it's kinda fitting that a disappointing game has a disappointing ending. So more like Yooka-Laylee, am I right? This game is honestly just sad. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. If you want to play an actual good 3D platformer, just play A Hat in Time or Mario Odyssey. Yooka-Laylee is just a rehash of Banjo-Kazooie. It comes off as a knockoff more than anything. You know, I feel like I've been saying that a lot recently. Everything that comes out is just a rehash of a better thing. I mean, look what's coming out in the cinema. Toy Story, Terminator, Child's Play, The Lion King. But maybe it transcends the entertainment industry. Maybe no matter how hard you try, history is doomed to repeat itself. Yooka-Laylee is just the beginning. A never-ending cycle of waking up for the same job, listening to the same music, consuming the same products, the human race destined to go on for eternity until civilization collapses, but even then it just builds itself back up again. The Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the birth of the industrial era, all of it is connected, and one day you're gonna wake up and realize life itself is just one big reboot.
George! Get rid of this thing!